Hello there, my name's Jan from JB Crafts. Thank you for joining me today. If this is the first time that you've come across me, welcome to the channel. I am an avid paper grafter. I used to do this for a living, and now finding a little bit more free time on my hands and absolutely loving the opportunity to craft with whatever I'd like to craft with instead of being restricted to a particular company's products. So yes, it's been very, very enlightening. I've been able to dig out lots and lots of stuff that I had from my previous crafting years, and yeah, I've really enjoyed it. So I've come up with this one for you today. And this is what's called a spanner card, and it's something I've been wanting to try for a while. There are lots of these out on the on Pinterest and on the internet, on YouTube, things like that, but it's not one that I've actually ever made before in my 20 odd years of crafting. So I thought, yeah, let's have a go. And to be honest, it's a really, really simple style once you get the idea of how it works. I did a lot of searching as to why it's called a spanner card. And I think it's because we have a part that spans the gap here. So if I lift this up, it looks to be a top fold card to start off with, but you've actually got one layer here that opens up, and then the middle layer is separate with your insert inside. And I think the spanner bit comes from the fact that I have a piece of acetate here spanning the gap. Now, when I read spanner card, I actually thought of a metal spanner, a tool, and I'm like, I just couldn't get the link at all. Yeah, so my old befuddled brain spent a little while, and as I say, that's what I've come up with, the fact that it spans this gap. Now, I've used acetate in here to get that sort of floating effect. It could be another piece of cardstock here that you make part of the design. So if you don't have acetate, it could actually be card or the pattern paper in here, whichever you actually prefer. So I'm going to show you how I've made it. It's really simple. It stands up open. I've done mine, like I said, it needs to be on a top fold, this one. I suppose you could actually do it this way. That would be an interesting one to revisit, actually, because you could open it up with the panel here, and then you could actually have this panel open as well and have everything portrait. I haven't seen them done like that, but that's maybe something that we could revisit at a later date. So I've used a really pretty paper collection, and again, this is an old one. I used to buy an awful lot from a company called Lily of the Valley. Absolutely loved their products when I was crafting prior to working in the industry, and I've got a lot of their stamps. They're all cute stamps, the rubber stamps, and I've got several of their paper pad collections. So I decided I'd dig one of these out, and this is a lovely sort of like a salmon pink tone with that lovely bright green in there. So there are lots of different designs. I've still got quite a few. I was very tempted with the stripes, but you can see I use this one on the front, and then I've gone for some of this one on the inside, and then the other one was this one. So the fact that you take papers from one paper pad actually means that you know that they're all going to work together. You don't have to do any thinking about, is that going to match that? Do I have the right things? The fact that they all come from here or from that one pad, you know full well that it's going to work. So this one, if any of you, I know some of you are Lily of the Valley fans, and if you have this in your stash, it's called Perfect Pet. It is very, very old. It's got a date on here of 2014, so I am going back a long time. But you could do this with any of your papers. So anything that comes from the same pad, you've literally got that opportunity to mix and match. And then all I've added in here is some plain green textured card, a solid for my matte layer, which has pulled out some of that lovely different tones of greens in there. And then I've actually complemented that with a little bit of matte mirror card, some satin finish card, and I've done that for the matte in the middle here. It's sort of picked out this tone rather than the pink, and then I've also done that to match for the mattes on the inside. You can just see that catching the light, just that little tiny strip. So I'm going to show you how I've made it. It's all made from, I've got a 7 3/4 by 5 3/4 inch card base, and I've cut that from a piece of, I've started using my Centura Pearl for the card bases, because I found out that I'd got quite a large stash, and it just gives an extra, sort of little touch of luxury to the card bases. So let's pop that over to one side. and I'll bring in my card piece. So I've made my own card blank from a piece of A4 cardstock, which measures 11.5 inches by 7 3/4, and then I've scored it on that long side at 5 3/4. So all we're going to do is pop that fold in and burnish it. Just make sure that all the corners and everything match. I like to just make sure it's all lined up nicely. Give it a burnish with my finger first, and then pop the burnishing tool in there just to give it a really nice crease. And then we need to do something else to this before we start working on it. So I need to release these two side pieces here. All right, now I think I did these at 1 3/4 inches. Let me just double check that. Yeah, 1 3/4 inches. So the best piece of equipment for this is a paper trimmer if you have one. You can do this with a craft knife and a mat. You could try and do it with a guillotine. It would be a little bit more tricky, but the paper trimmers work great for partial cuts. And I tend to keep mine sideways. I just find it easier to use the lines and line it up when I'm doing this kind of cutting. So on the front here, I want to cut. Let me just get my ruler, my other ruler out of there, wherever it's hiding. I want to cut up here on each side 1 3/4 inches in, and then the same at this side 1 3/4 inches in. So for the first one, I'm going to pop this in, and I've got the front panel at the top, and I'm going to line it up on my trimmer here at 1 3/4 inches. So I've got the 1 3/4. Make sure that everything is running nice and straight. Pop this in place, and the beauty of having a trimmer is that you can start cutting at any point along here. It's got a little tiny guideline at the front here, so I am actually going to line that up with my score line here. Just make sure I'm in the right place, and then literally run that cut down my cardstock, and what it's done is release this panel here. And then I'm going to flip it. Because I'm cutting, it doesn't really matter which side I'm working on, so I'm going to flip it, and I'm going to do the same. I'm going to use this to line it all up at 1 3/4 inches, and then I'm going to bring this back in again, line it up with my score line, make sure that it's nice and neat just on the score line there, and then pop that cut. And I find that the easiest way to release these two pieces. So we'll pop that down to one side. Okay, now when you've used a trimmer, I do find that you get a bit of a it can alter the edge of the card. I've got here a little bit where I've cut it on the opposite side that it almost looks rough. So just a little trick with that: if you've got a ball tool of any description, just carefully run it down the edge here, and what it'll do is just finish off that edge nicely. You can see it's taken off that rough edge. I'm going to do that on both of these. Even though this one was cut the right way, it almost gives that die cut look. So again, just down there, and I'm going to do the same on that middle panel because that's the other side of the cut there. I'm just going to smooth that one out, and then I'm going to do the same on this side. It just gives a really nice finish to that cardstock. So that's all I need to do for my front panel, and we've now got this ready to work with. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my spanner piece in. I'm going to put the bridge across here to make that front panel, and to do that I've taken a piece of acetate that's the same width as the card, so we're looking at the 7 3/4 inches. Now this can be any depth that you want, you know, depending on what you're going to put on the front of your card. You could come higher up, you could put a really thin piece in. Mine measures 1.5 inches. Okay, so yeah, we've got 1.5 inches in width here, and I've put some tape on the back ready because we're going to stick this behind here so that it bridges that gap. We've got that span across the card there. Now I've put a couple of pieces of tape on already, but I also want to put some on this side, and I'd left that just to show you how I actually work on this. I'm going to flip it over like so, and I'm going to use my panels as the guideline. So I've got some of my red line tape, which I tend to use when I'm working with acetate. and I'm just going to use this as a guide so that I'm coming inside that area where I know my tape's going to be hidden. I've got my little snips there just to snip that off, and then I'm going to do the same at this side. So I've just flipped it round so that I can get to it easier. It's exactly the same at both sides. And again, I'm just going to run a piece in here so that I know that that's positioned correctly and it's not going to show when we pop it into the card. So what we're going to do then is take off, we'll do one side first. Have I got it on the, yeah, I thought I'd put it, do you know I have, I've put it on the wrong side. Do you know there was 2 ways to do that, Jan, and you chose the wrong way. So I need to release that. Fortunately, acetate is quite forgiving, and we'll try that again, shall we, on the right side. It wanted to be on the same side as the one that I've already worked on. As soon as I turned that over then, I thought I've got it on 2 different sides. Yep, so we need to do the same on this side. Like I said, fortunately, the acetate, if that had been paper, we might have been recutting the paper, but there we go. Just reposition that on that side. Phew, crisis averted. There we go. And like I said, I'm going to take one side off first. So I've got the 2 pieces of liner to take away. And we're going to position this one in place first. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open this up with just those 2 pieces that we cut. And I want to pop this into the corner and level with the base of the card there. So I've got this line running parallel here. And then once that's in place, I'm going to give that a good burnish with the edge of my bone folder there, just to make sure that that's all sealed down. And then I'm going to spin this round, and we're going to do the same at this side. So I'm going to take away that liner. And again, just making sure that this runs nice and flat, nice and parallel, right across the bottom edge here. And line it up with the bottom edge of the card. So it wants to lay flat and run nice and parallel here. And again, once you're happy, just take that bone folder and burnish. You can see how it changes colour when you've got all the air bubbles out and you've got a really nice seal. So that's actually spanned that gap here to create that spanner card design. And then what we need to do now is think about the decorations that we're going to pop on here. So again, I've cut panels from those papers and I've got those ready. So we need 2 for the sides here. And those are exactly the same measurement as what I'm going to put inside. Now you could just put 1 large panel in here as a greeting if you wish, but I thought it looked nice with those pieces, because when you open it to this stage, these pieces are going to show. So what I've done is I've taken some of the different pattern papers and I've cut my panels at the ready. So we've got a green that matches my paper here, and then I've got my panel at the ready. So the green layer measures 5.5 in height, so it's 1/4 inch smaller than the height of the card, by 1.5 inches, 1/4 inch smaller than the width of the panel that we made. And then my piece of pattern paper is just 1/8 inch difference, so that I've got a nice tiny little border. So 5 3/8 by 1 3/8. And I've gone round the edge of it, and I've just used a little bit of my inks here. I've gone with green round this one because it was on the green cardstock. So this is actually an opaque pigment ink from Spectrum Noir, and I just chose a colour that toned in with what I was working on. So what we're going to do then is take some of that all-purpose glue and make sure that that's clear, and then we'll pop these 2 together. So I'm just going to add some on the back of here. I don't think I've got all that off there, Jan, seeing as it's not coming out. Come on, you little tinker. There we go. Let's try it again. Ooh, we're not playing this morning. Have I opened it fully? There we go. Third time lucky. So all I'm going to do then is lay that one with that little tiny border, and again using that wet glue gives you time to just wriggle everything into place here, like so. And then what I've done is I've cut another one of those exactly the same, and these are going to go at each side. Now these were cut from the same piece, so you can see the continuation of the pattern. So I'm going to pop them like that, even though they're not next to each other. I'm going to pop them like that on my my panel. And again, we're just going to lay some of that glue down so that I can wriggle these into place and pop these one on each side of the front. There we go. So this one's going to go on this side. So I've got a slightly wider border around my white Centura pearl, and then that little skinny green border in the middle there. And then we'll get this one on this side. Exactly the same. Just making sure that I've got a nice even border all the way around. And then we can seal that one in place. So if you've got anything that's directional, just make sure that this one's the right way up. I've got a little tiny bit of wording in mine, so I needed to just make sure that they went in the right orientation. Then the next bit that we're going to work on is this panel inside. So I'm going to open this up, and I've cut a piece of that satin card here, which has just got that sort of peachy tone to it, to go on the inside of my panel. And I've left the same borders, and this one measures 5.5 inches tall again by 4 inches this time. And then my pattern paper from that same paper pad, 1/8 of an inch difference at 3 7/8 by 5 3/8. Now just because I'm going on to that satin card here, I've actually popped some tape on the back of this one. So I am just going to use the tape to secure this. The solvent glue, if it's fine for adhering to the panel, but if any of it squidges out, it can sometimes affect the surface of a coated cardstock. So all I'm going to do is I've taken the little tabs out, like I've shown you in previous videos, and I'm going to use this bottom edge that's still got the tape on and get this lined up the best I can with that tiny little skinny border before I actually commit to popping that one in place. And then when I'm happy with that, I can then just use these little tabs and pull out the liner there, and we've got that one sealed in place now. And then to go on to here, although this is still a coated cardstock, I'm just going to be very careful with how much glue I pop on here. And then we're going to sit this one on top. And again, I don't think there is a right or wrong way. The little pattern on here goes both ways. So I don't really think there is a right or wrong. And we're just going to pop this one on the middle of there and just wriggle that one into place. So again, we've got that same border around the outside there. And I'm just going to pop my block, because that's a larger area. I'm going to close it up and pop the block on there while we just do the next stage. So for the inside of the card, I've actually got a piece with my sentiment on that spans the whole inside of the card. So there's two ways to do this. You could cut the same measurements as we did for the front and do this in 3 pieces, or you can do it all in one layer like I'm going to show you here. So I've cut my panel that's going to fit on the inside here, and this is 1/4 inch smaller again than the whole design. So we've gone down to 7.5 by 5.5. This is going to sit on the inside, and then we're going to create the 2 panels to go back on that outside of here. So these are exactly the same measurements as what I gave you for the front. Okay, so we're looking at that 5.5 inches tall, and the mat layer was 1.5, And then the inside pieces are 5 3/8 by 1 3/8, and I've just used that third pattern for this. And these are going to line up perfectly with the outside, so they're going to go right to the outside on 3 sides here. I'm just going to turn this round to make it a little bit easier. So I'm going to pop them right on the edge here and make sure that that white is level underneath. So it's running parallel on all 3 sides, and then we're going to do the same with this one. So you can see that wet glue does come in handy because you can get everything lined up there. So again, I'm going to go for right on the edge there, and that wet glue just allows you to wriggle everything into place. Press it down, and then we'll just leave that one to dry for a second before we actually add it to the card. So this one should be okay now. I'm going to pop that one on the inside when those have dried, and then all there is left really is to start and decorate. So you can decide how you're going to decorate yours. I've got my little pot of tricks again, and I've got a couple of embellishments and a sentiment. So let's have a look. My main embellishment on here is going to be the heart, and I've just picked out some plain green out of my scrap, and I've embossed that with this gorgeous embossing folder from Creative Expressions. It's called a quilted heart. It's got the heart design, and I've just popped this in and chosen where I wanted it to emboss and pop that through my my machine. And this is going to go to one side, but I only need to stick it. I don't want to stick it to this back panel. So you can see there that it's overhanging the acetate. So I'm going to cut a couple of pieces of the red line tape because I'm sticking it onto the acetate there. And I just need a couple of little pieces to pop this in place. So we're actually going to put one of them, it's going to overlap the acetate and the side panel. So I can actually put one of those pieces down at the bottom, so under that edge just there. So that's going to attach to the acetate, and then the other piece is going to go under this edge here. So I'm going to put that one right on the edge there, and I'm just going to secure it in those 2 places. So we'll pop that onto the front. So just remove the liner, and then this one literally is going to go just at a slight angle there, about like that. I'm happy with that. And then I've cut a couple of butterflies. Now this set I've had for a very, very long time. This is one of the first sets that I bought when I was working at Crafters Companion, and it was a Sarah signature collection called Shabby Chic. And I bought 2 sets of this particular die because I love my butterflies. I love that there are 3 different sizes, and as I say, you get 3 of them in the set if you have this particular set in your stash. But I bought it twice because I use these such a lot, and it means that I can cut more of them at once. So I've cut the smallest one and the middle-sized one. I felt that this was a bit big for what I needed, and I've cut that out of a nice sort of salmon pink cardstock to match what's going on in here. And then I've just edged it with a little bit of pink ink. So I've used my finger dauber here just round the edge, and you can just see there's a little tiny bit of definition where it's made it a bit darker at the edges on there. And we're going to pop that one onto here, and then I've got a second one to go up at the top. So I'm going to flick to my precision tip for this one because I only want a little bit of glue on the inside of the body here. So again, I'm just going to pop this in some places in the center here, and then we'll just grab those tweezers, and this one's going to sit again at an angle in the middle of there. Just give that a second for that to adhere, and then we're going to do the same with this one. So again, just round that little body section where you've got a bit of card that's suitable. And again, this one's going to go straight onto the background. So this is the piece that lifts up, and this one's just going to echo to offset this up here like so. And then the last thing is I want to pop my sentiment in. So I've actually stamped out the especially for you. And then this is just a little border die that I have in my stash. It's just a thin metal die, and it creates that lovely row of hearts there. So I've cut that from the same cardstock as the butterfly, and I've just cut it down and stuck it on behind the sentiment. This was a little bit was left over, just one of the hearts that I've trimmed off, and this is going to be my sentiment that's going to fit in here, but I'm actually going to pop that so that there's a bit more interest on the inside here, like so. So again, we're going to add some glue to the back of that, and I'm going to stay with that PVA glue there just for the precision tip on it. I'm just going to pop some tiny little dots on here so that I've got that adhered as well. And then I tend to just tap it off a little bit so that anything like that that's very delicate, so that it's not going to squidge out onto the card. Now I want this to go behind the panel, and I know that panel was 1.5 inches deep, so I'm going to sort of aim roughly, and I'm not going to press it all the way down until I'm happy with that positioning. Yeah, that works fine. I don't mind the little hearts popping out, but I wanted the sentiment to run behind that piece of acetate. So once we're happy, we can actually press that into place. Make sure that it's all running straight, and I've lined it up with the edge of the paper section there so that this matte layer is still showing underneath. Okay, and then the very final thing that we need to do is just add that insert on the inside, and I'm going to flick back to that all-purpose glue for this now that those panels have dried. And again, we're just going to pop a layer of glue on the back here, open up the whole thing, and then you'll see it all come together. So this one's got that same border, so lay that down, wriggle it into place, and press that down nicely. Apologies if you can hear little Lacey snoring again. She's laid on the floor. She's been struggling this last few days. We've had some of the best weather yet in the UK. We've waited a long time this year. It's been a long time coming, but it's gone from sort of zero to hero kind of thing. It's been extremely warm this last couple of days, 2 or 3 days, and she's getting so hot. I know any of you out there that have got little pups or any animals, it's you know, trying to keep them cool. We've tried our best. She has a cool mat. She's got a little cool vest that she wears. We've got her laid on a wet towel yesterday, but she's really been struggling. She's not been sleeping very well overnight. So I think she's taking the opportunity at the moment, because my conservatory floor's tiled, it's nice and cool on the floor. And I do tend to come in here in the morning, because once the sun comes over after lunchtime, it does get very warm in here as well. So yeah, apologies if you can hear her snoring away there on the floor. So I think we're just about sorted there. I've just added some gems, and I'll show you that original one again in a second. So yeah, that spanner card design, once these have dried nicely, I tend to just use something that's got a round barrel in it. So I've got my pokey tool here, and just curl those wings slightly round something round so that you've got a bit of dimension on the butterflies. And that's why I only stuck them in the center there, but just giving that paper a little bit of shaping around something like that. And you've got, now you can just see there's a little bit of dimension going on those. So you've got that front layer with the detail like so. Then you've got the second layer. You can see now why these make such a difference when you've added those to the background, because they bring it all in line with that second layer. And then inside you've got your little stamp sentiment, and I've just added a tiny pop of colour with my pens there just to pick up the colour scheme for the rest of the card. So that's my spanner card design, and all I did to that finished sample, of course, as always, no card is finished in Jan's World without the gems, so I did get a bit gem heavy. I tend to just go for a little spray, but I very much felt that the butterflies needed some centres, and then I've offset the panels here as well. tiny little ones on the top of the hearts, and then it was Jan, step away from the card. I've said many times my biggest problem is knowing when to step away, when something's finished, and this is what I actually came up with. So that's my design for today. Have one last little look at how that works, and there we go. So again, I could make a nice envelope, possibly with a coordinating paper for this to fit in, because it is slightly larger than a standard size. It would fit in an A5 envelope. So yeah, I could go for something like that, or alternatively make a paper envelope to match it. So thank you for joining me today. Please consider giving that video a thumbs up if you've enjoyed watching, and I'll see you back here very soon. Bye bye for now.